Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by Allstate and the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust.
Good evening and bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Marissa Parra, reporter with CBS 2 Chicago. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. Here's what we're looking at tonight. More than 5 million Latinos live with a disability nationwide. We talk with advocates about what they feel is needed to create a supportive and equitable environment for everyone. Plus, how a local pharmacist is offering prescriptions with an extra dose of cultural understanding. And White Sox legend Minnie Miñoso joined baseball's Hall of Fame this week. We talk with family and friends about finally seeing this long-awaited honor.
Well, I'm just trying to let people know that, hey, the bicycles can do more for you if you let it.
And a local cyclist gives la última palabra on how she says learning to speak up for yourself is like riding a bike. First off tonight, according to a University of New Hampshire analysis, 9% of America's Latinos live with a disability, ranging from physical and cognitive impairments to mental health disorders. And while that's a lower rate than other racial and ethnic groups, Latinos are more likely to be unemployed or to drop out of school due to disability. They're also more likely to have worse health outcomes. And with language and cultural barriers and concerns about documentation preventing many Latinos from seeking care, we may not have a full and accurate picture of how many Latinos are living with a disability. Joining us now to speak on this, we have Michelle Garcia, Manager of Organizing and Community Development for Access Living, and Dr. Leonor Vanek, Board President of the National Coalition of Latinxes with Disabilities. Michelle, let's head to you first. I want to talk about what it means to have a disability. Can you describe the range of conditions that qualify as a disability?
Yes. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Michelle Garcia. I'm the manager of community organizing with at Access Living in Chicago. And having a disability could range from, having limited use of your limbs. Like, for example, there's cerebral palsy. I have cerebral palsy, which limits my ability to have my motor skills, such as walking, and also use of my right hand, for example. But there's also other disabilities, like limitations in the ability to speak or see, for somebody who has limited vision or is blind. Some folks who have disabilities are also hard of hearing or deaf. And then there's also people who have cognitive disabilities or learning disabilities. Those are more, some of them are more invisible disabilities. There's also folks who might have disabilities who have mental health disabilities. So again, more invisible disabilities, like bipolar disability, and many others, right, such as. So there's an array of disabilities. There's autism, as well, and that can range. So every disability has a range of of severity, I guess you could say it. So I could have I'm in the range of a middle severity of cerebral palsy. Mm-hmm. There's others who have less severity, or others who have more severity. So there we have that kind of different types of disabilities.
Well, Michelle, I'll say first, thank you for sharing your story with us. Dr. Vanek, I want to talk about the big picture here. What is the big picture like for Latinos with disabilities, and are there cities or even states that are more supportive than others?
Yeah, so first, thank you for having us. When it comes to disability, I just want to echo what Michelle said and have everyone understand that just like Latinos, we're mestizos, we come in various different, from dark skin all the way to white skin, and then we're intersectional with being female and male, etc. That's the same thing with disability. There's also the ability to be intersectional, so I can have a neurodivergent and be, deaf. Others are in different situations, so we wanted to make sure that people understood that. And as it relates to disabilities, we also wanted to also put out the fact that we know that COVID right now is also increasing long haul, and a lot of people are going to be joining the disability, and we know that disability is an undercount. As it relates to where different patterns with disabilities and what states are better than others, we know that Illinois is fantastic right now with the ability to provide services based on all of the nonprofits that we have. Same thing with other specific disabilities where you have the National Association for Down Syndrome with my sister, or the ARC of Illinois, or the ARC of the United States, or U.S. Cerebral Palsy. Again, everything, every single organization has a specific identity that they go to. When it goes to national patterns, we know that we're undercounted. We know that many Latinos do not even know that they have a disability. I'll give you an example. You ask people if they have diabetes, and many people will say yes, they'll raise their hand. And if you ask them, do they have a disability, they say no. And they don't understand that, that's they're protected under the ADA for work. So we're trying to also educate nationally and locally on what a disability is, because it does range, it comes and goes, it can flare up, and there's also aging across the lifespan that we also have to increase. So disability is not something to also be ashamed of, and that we know that there's a lot of funding is also attached to how national patterns are provided.
So we just have a couple minutes here. I want to make sure we have time to get to some of these other questions. You mentioned that Illinois, you said, does a pretty good job, but how would you rate Chicago, specifically the Lightfoot administration, when it comes to improving quality of life and equity for people with disabilities in the city specifically?
I think her span as mayor is kind of short term. I think if we take a look at the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're still fighting for access to rights. We are still fighting for affordable, accessible, integrated housing. We're still fighting, trying to get resources and services for many of our individuals. We're also looking at Latinos who are undocumented, who have disabilities, and what happens to children at the age of 22 when they age out and there are no services. I think that there are a lot of conversations that are being included, and the fact that the mayor's office within the last week is announcing innovative programs to hire people with disabilities and pass them through, or the different colleges are starting to accept Latinos with disabilities, but we still have a long way to go, not only in education with the Chicago public school systems, but also for transportation and housing.
A lot of work to be done, and we just have 1 minute left. Michelle, with just 45 seconds, how would you say, what resources are available in Chicago for Latinos with disabilities and their families?
So there's some resources. For example, I know in the hospital settings we have interpreter supports, and that's like for somebody who goes to a hospital, they have the videos available for somebody who needs interpreting. There's still a long way to go for that, but they are available. The CHA also is increasing their Spanish speaking booklets and other supports that they have for that. The transportation, as you mentioned earlier,
yes,
they also have increased their information in Spanish for Latinx
and
with
Michelle,
disabilities.
thank you both so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Michelle Garcia and Dr. Leonor Vanek, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. When it comes to healthcare, clear communication is critical to good outcomes. Nowhere is that truer than America, where the healthcare system can be difficult to navigate, as well as vastly different from the systems in other countries. In the West Lawn community, a first-generation Mexican-American pharmacist is trying to bridge that communication gap by adding a dose of trust and understanding to his patients' prescriptions. Producer Erica Gunderson has that story.
I try to get here a little early because this is a very busy store. Prescriptions start rolling in either online or on the phone.
Pharmacy, this is Chris speaking. I can help you. At the 63rd and Pulaski CVS, a steady stream of patients arrive at the pharmacy counter from open to close.
My team here is fantastic. Most of them are also Spanish speakers. They'll fill 600 plus prescriptions a day. I will work with them to fill the prescriptions, verify the prescriptions, and then serve our patients when they come here. Often, especially when they come in and they start trying to speak with us and they hear that we can speak Spanish with them, I hear relief.
To CVS pharmacist Cristobal Alvarez, pharmacists are more than people who dispense your prescriptions. They're healthcare's most accessible ambassadors.
If you have a question and it's during the day, you can walk into a pharmacy and ask to speak with a pharmacist. You can't really walk into a doctor's office and ask to speak with a nurse or speak with a doctor. We can explain and speak with them in ways that maybe a doctor at a clinic might not have the time to.
Alvarez says his path to the pharmacy began as a child, when he was often called upon to act as a translator between Spanish-speaking family members and English-speaking healthcare providers.
My grandma, for example, diabetic, not, a word that they could share with the doctor. So it was my job, even as a child, to try to translate that.
And in communities like West Lawn, Alvarez says communicating with healthcare providers often means speaking not only the same language, but also the same culture.
I see a lot of Mexican Americans or recent immigrants who could really use that support to kind of help them navigate. How do I buy a prescription? In Mexico, you feel like you're getting a cough, you walk to a pharmacy, you ask them for an antibiotic, they hand it to you. You can't do that here. Not too long ago, we had someone that happened with like an anti-seizure medication. Here in the United States, they can't come in and just grab a seizure medication off the back of the shelf.
CVS Health's Dr. Stephanie White says Alvarez's experiences behind the counter reflect the drugstore giant's research into how Latino Chicagoans prefer to interact with healthcare providers.
If we look at how communities of color kind of responded among our non-white Chicagoans when they're selecting their most trusted healthcare providers, 31% select providers who understand and relate to their culture. And 39% were selecting providers who understand their lifestyle and environmental factors that impact their health. And when it pertained to things like routine care for illnesses or injuries, more than a quarter of our non-white Chicago respondents rely on their local pharmacies, more than twice that of white respondents.
Alvarez says even when they can't be of direct help, the pharmacy team tries to be a resource for their patients.
If someone comes in here with an open wound, I'm not going to be able to stitch them up, but I can tell them, hey, that needs medical attention. I need you to go to the doctor's office right now. And so from there, I'm like, well, we'll have to find you a clinic.
That one does need a refill from the doctor's office.
And when it comes to healthcare conversations, a strong dose of trust is often just what the doctor ordered.
Medications and disease are complicated. It's why it's so important to be able to speak with people in a way that they're comfortable with. And, that culturally affirming healthcare is so vital.
For Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
CVS is offering free community health events throughout the Chicago area in the coming weeks. You'll find more on that on our website. On July 23rd, White Sox legend Minnie Miñoso made the ultimate home run, a forever home in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Known to many as the Latino Jackie Robinson, Miñoso played 12 of his 20 seasons in the majors right here in Chicago. For generations of White Sox fans, he was a favorite for his outstanding performance on the field and his gregarious spirit off of it. Miñoso's widow, Sharon Rice Miñoso, gave the induction speech at the Cooperstown ceremony. Take a listen.
Through it all, Minnie was never bitter, despite the many injustices and hardships he faced. Today's honor bestowed upon Minnie is most appropriate, not only as a Hall of Fame player, but Minnie was always a gentleman and Hall of Fame person, off the field and in the community.
Joining us now to share a little bit more light, Minnie Miñoso's son, Charlie Rice Miñoso, and baseball historian and University of Illinois history professor, Adrian Burgos Jr. Charlie, to you first, what was it like for you and your family seeing that moment finally come?
It was such an honor, and it was extremely emotional. It was I loved seeing the huge display of Black and Latino representation in Cooperstown. I felt so proud of the job my mother did delivering that speech on Dad's behalf, but she really was right in saying that the whole weekend was very bittersweet. It was sweet knowing that Dad's history and contributions will live on, but it was bitter because in addition to this honor not happening in our dad's lifetime, it also missed our brother Orestes' lifetime as well, who we just lost to ALS in March. They played side by side together, his father and son in the Mexican professional leagues, and he was the only person who would have enjoyed the festivities more than Dad.
That's so special. And listen, Adrian, you were there for the ceremony too and have long been advocating for Minnie Miñoso's induction. What was it like to see those efforts come to fruition?
Well, it was actually special for me because I got to see Sharon, Charlie, Cecilia, Marilyn, their family members. I was sitting a couple rows behind them to see their joy. This is really what Hall of Fame induction ceremonies are about. It's about their friends and family. It's sad that Minnie, who loved his fans, loved his family, was not there for this. But the outpouring of love for Minnie and his countrymen, Tony Oliva and their family, were just so happy to share this day together with the Miñoso family, and that made it extra special.
Well, Charlie, you actually mentioned this just a moment ago. You said your dad wasn't the only professional baseball player in your family. Your brother actually followed in his footsteps in the Mexican leagues. Tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, he was Dad's mini-me, but it's hard to say someone who was 6'4" was Dad's mini-me, but he was just an amazing person. He was so he was as much of a gentleman than our dad was. I just loved to see the partnership that he had with his wife, Twee. He was just a great person. He was passionate about baseball. He was passionate about his community and his faith. And he just adored our dad. The two of them were as thick as thieves. And I'd like to think that they were with us in Cooperstown together. But again, the only thing that would have made it better is if they were both there themselves. And if Dad were on that stage, they both earned being there themselves. It's what not only our family would have wanted for Dad to have accepted that himself, but it's also what he had deserved. And also, I'm sure all the fans in attendance and who supported our family throughout the years would have loved to have seen that. But still, we find comfort knowing that his legacy and his contributions will live on.
Well, Adrian, we know that Minnie was inducted alongside other players like Buck O'Neill, who also had long careers in the leagues. How important to correcting the historical record were these inductions?
They're very important. It started with Bud Fowler, the very first African-American professional ball player to make a national name for himself, who actually grew up in Cooperstown, so in the 1870s. To Minnie Miñoso, the first Afro-Cubano, Afro-Latino to star in Major League Baseball. It is such a legacy, moving from the Negro Leagues into Major League Baseball, that he inspired so many. And I think finally Cooperstown and other people around baseball are getting a sense of what Minnie meant to the Louis Tiants and Orlando Cepedas and Antonio Oliva even. They all looked up to Minnie because he was, and this is not hyperbole, he was our Jackie Robinson. He did it with style, grace, enthusiasm, and excellence on the field. And that he made himself such a part of Chicago, of the South Side community, of the Latino community, of the African American community, of the Chicago community, was why we so want to remember and celebrate who and what he did, and to have it, live on.
Charlie, to say the least, your father was such a beloved figure in Chicago. What have you heard from his fans about this induction this week?
Just that it, again, was long overdue, as Adrian had mentioned, but it's been wonderful to hear these amazing stories of how Dad has connected with individuals, not just across Chicago, but across the country, across the world in Latin America and with his countrymen. It's been amazing to just hear how he's connected with so many, and that he's, still years after he's passed, that he's still loved. And it's been amazing to even all weekend, there was like a running joke with Tony Oliva that there was a song of my written about Dad in Cuba called Miñoso al bate, and in English it basically says that anytime Minoso would be at bat, the ball would dance the cha-cha. So to see Tony Oliva, mentioning that in his own acceptance speech. And also to see him all weekend, every time he'd see like myself or my mom or my sisters, that's what he would say. And then he'd do his own little cha-cha about Dad, because he just loved him that much. And it was very surreal. But I'm still it's still comforting though. But I just wish that people were here to say and share this love with Dad in person. But I do hope, moving forward, that we're able to honor and recognize other pioneers and hidden figures in baseball, for example, like Luis Dion, who Adriana just mentioned, or other contributors to sports and society who are able to hopefully that they can receive their laurels while they're still with us and while they're still around to enjoy them.
Well, thank you so much for both sharing a lot of what you remember and what you know of his life and his legacy, and congratulations on what is such a big honor. We're going to be seeing more photos from the life of Minnie Miñoso later in our program. First, our thanks to Charlie Rice Miñoso and Adrian Burgos Jr.
Thanks for having us.
Up next, La Última Palabra on cycling. Stay with us. For bicyclists, staying safe on Chicago's loud and chaotic roads can be a tall order, and it often requires being your own best advocate. Here, local cyclist Shail Hernandez offers La Última Palabra on what claiming a lane did for her health and her spirit, and what she says it can do for yours too.
My name is Shail Hernandez. I'm currently the community bike repair manager here at Working Bikes. Meaning that if you get a flat or you need a brake adjustment or something to keep you rolling on your bike, I got you. Bicycle riding has done a lot for me. I grew up with this sense of like being told, calladita, tú eres más bonita. And, it wasn't just me, it was my mother, all the women in my family for generations, just being told the quieter you are, the better, the prettier, the more you're going to succeed. And it wasn't until I was waiting at a bus stop in Tucson, Arizona in 120-degree plus weather, I was just like, I can't wait for the bus, not reliable. And I found a bicycle. It was actually my sister's bicycle. And I just remember riding when I was an undergrad from the U of A all the way to my house for the first time. I just felt so empowered. So I was just like, I can do this. Ever since then, that was like 4 years ago, I have not stopped riding my bicycle. As an inexperienced bike rider, I was very shy. I would try to be out of the way because I was raised that way. I was just little by little learning how to take space as a woman, and most importantly, to be vocal and taking and owning, like, this is my bike lane, and having to be not aggressive, but definitely very loud and very direct. It's just very important to be vocal, to be heard, to be, seen in English and Spanish, to be heard with your accent and your Spanish words that you throw in because you forgot your English word, and you're like, whatever, you figure it out. It's and I didn't know that bicycles could do that. Bicycle riding did more than just, improve my health and my emotional well-being, but it really made me feel like, no, I'm going to stand my ground. And I'm going to make sure that you listen and that you hear me. I'm just trying to let people know that, hey, the bicycles can do more for you if you let it. Take your time, practice at home, build your skills, and then also come share them in the community bike ride. Start owning and take over one block at a time, because these are your streets too. Just keep pedaling.
You can find out more on working bikes and watch more on our La Última Palabra series on our website. And that's our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And you can catch my reporting on CBS 2 Chicago. Now, from all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, I'm Marissa Parra. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy, stay safe, y buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm whose attorneys embrace a culture of philanthropy and service by volunteering their time, expertise, and guidance to help others in the greater Chicago community.